Hi folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host Kurt Wiegel. Today we are on the set of Game Geeks 3.5, the revision. I warned you it was coming. Actually, I'm kidding. We're at No Brand Con 07 in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 2008. The point of today is something slightly different. We are going to be having a more general round-robin open panel discussion about role-playing. In front of me we have quite an audience of role-playing enthusiasts. Say hi, enthusiasts.
Hi.
Thank you. And now, honestly, I'm a teacher and I'm used to running my mouth for hours on end and having people look at me with that bored, glassed-over stare. So rather than inflict that on all of you, why don't we just open it up? Any questions, comments? Why do we role play? Why do we role play? I assume everyone in here has at least had some role playing experience. Why do we do this? This is an odd hobby we have. It's not acting. It's not really truly random. Why do we do this hobby?
Because it's fun.
What?
Because it's fun.
Because it's fun. What's fun about it for you?
There's a lot of stuff that's fun about it.
Now you've written your own game, right?
Yes.
What is it?
It's called Explosion.
What is it about?
It's an action movie RPG. Fairly simple.
Okay.
But, a lot of fun. Really, I think captures what action heroes can do.
Okay.
In the sense of like a movie.
Excellent.
Yeah, one of the things I really like most about role playing is making things up. Like, especially on the fly. And how I can, if someone does something, then I can just say, hey, this is how I respond. This is how the world responds.
Okay. It's once described as, I read in one book once, it was improvisational radio theater was an interesting description for role-playing. Because, except for LARPing, we're not really up walking around beating on people with things. And it is sort of it's more cerebral than that. Usually we're sitting around a table or on a bunch of couches and there's Mountain Dew, always Mountain Dew, and chips and dip and, stuff, dip, sometimes the players are the dips, and stuff all around us. And, but it's more spoken with what you do. How many of you LARP? How many of you have actually LARPed before? I've actually never LARPed. So tell us about LARPing a little bit.
Well, there's two basic kinds of LARPs. There's ball for LARP, like running around hitting people with things, throwing sandbags that are actually fireballs. And there's also like the LARP that's going on today, which is more hands-off. Usually instead of running around hitting people, it's more like acting, where you wander around, you talk to people, you try to often a more social situation than anything else. For the most part, it's just like regular role-playing, except you have usually a lot more people, and you've got more situations. Like you can actually split off and do things on your own without someone supervising you.
Okay.
Unlike a regular tabletop game where you always have that storyteller or that dungeon master hovering over you, telling you how the world responds.
Okay.
Then you're physically acting it out more.
Yeah, it makes it a little more visceral.
Okay, well that's LARPing. All right, so you know what? What do we want to talk about? What games do we like? I mean, obviously you made your own game, so that's probably your pet favorite right now. But
oh yeah, I'm running it.
oh, excellent. Mike.
Well, as long as this is going to be, on role playing, I think you couldn't go without talking about WoW. I mean, really, because especially now, I mean, I don't know how many users it has now, but I mean, it's flooded just market. It's made new people. I mean, people who just had never played role playing games before now are like huge into it. So I mean, I think that's kind of just different, and I think that's kind of just come about here recently with all the MMOs. I think it's a lot easier now.
I remember when I was younger, I won't give you the date, is when EverQuest first came out, and that was almost like you always had the MUDs, and then you had the mushes, and then EverQuest was, I think, one of the first ones to really tie in a graphical sort of interface with it, and then make that. Now, I'll be very honest. I've never played a MUD. I've never played a mush. I've never played EverQuest. I'm used to calling it Evercrack, and I'm having to edit it here. EverQuest or World of Warcraft. I'm really bad at the whole typing thing, and I can barely run a computer. So, in honesty, I've never gotten into any of those. Plus, the reason I role play is because when I grew up, there was never really any chances for acting. That's how I got into it. So I came to a different point of view. But that's a really good question. And to tie that in with the previous statement, aside from some people losing jobs or flunking out of school or some other minor crises, how come things like World of Warcraft EverQuest, the Muds and the Mushes, never really had the social backlash like role-playing did for a really long time. Have you thought about that? I mean,
could it be that WoW has a tangible economic factor that a company's making lots of money off of it?
That could very well be the case.
One of the things I've talked to a lot of game store owners and things is that Warcraft is the single worst thing to happen to the gaming community ever, because it's subtracted from every other variety of gaming. I do a lot of Magic, so it severely hurt the Magic community, and it's driven a lot of people away from gaming stores and onto their computers. So, in the end, I think the Warcraft internally, I know a lot of serious gamers dislike Warcraft because it's detracted from tabletop games and things like that. And so I think that's not part of the Warcraft situation that, it does impart the gaming community as a whole.
Well, it's funny you said that you were a Magic player. Back when I was in college, in about 93-ish is when Magic, 93, 94, 95 is when Magic first really hit Kentucky, where I was going to undergrad. And I remember they declared that the death knell of role-playing at the time. Magic was going to be the thing that destroyed role-playing. And there's something to be said for things like Magic and World of Warcraft that as gamers have gotten older, I'm not even a first-generation gamer. Well, I'm a first-generation gamer. I actually came into it toward the end of the first real push. Like I said, I got in about 79, I think. That was by the time D&D had already gotten some legs under it. A lot of us are getting older. A lot of us, especially the older gamers, we're getting older. A lot of us are married. A lot of us have jobs. A lot of us have kids. We have responsibilities, and it's harder to find time for that weekly game. I know I have a very patient, very wonderful, the phrase long-suffering applies to her, wife who gives me, without complaint, without fuss, and without any fight, my Tuesday night game. That's it. The kids know Daddy's going downstairs to game. Say goodnight to him, and we'll see him in the morning. And I'm very lucky that way. But as we get older, a lot of the gamers, as we've gotten older, it gets harder for us to find time. I think that's some of the niche where things like World of Warcraft, assuming that people don't get addicted to it and take it too far, which is what happened in D&D in the very beginning too. EverQuest, a lot of the card games, like the little Pirates of the Spanish Main, that little build your boat and fight with the boat thing. I've looked at that. That's really a neat looking game. I'm not particularly into it, but it's really cool looking, and I can really see how that can apply in situations like this.
Well, the interesting thing, I think, is that each of those different sects, like role-playing games, card games, board games, online games, they're not just separate entities. They all mix together. They each, pull in ideas. I've been reading on the new edition of D&D coming out soon, and a lot of those...
Oh boy, that's a bear trap waiting to go off.
I know.
Go ahead.
But a lot of people say it's it's too much like an MMO, but it's true that MMOs pulled off of D&D, EverQuest and Muds being basically based on D&D from the start. And then now D&D is pulling off of the MMOs, and now the company that makes D&D also makes Magic, so those ideas are intermingling to some degree. It's not a static community of game development.
So there we have it, a brief discussion about why we role play, what brings us to the table, and how the interactions have kind of started. We'll take a little break now. We'll come back and I think we've just already sprung the trap. We need to start talking about 4th edition. That's the big news this year. So for Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.